Today, we tackle creative Photoshop compositing on Behind the Shot. Hi, welcome to Behind the Shot. I'm Steve Brazill. This is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers and artists, for that matter, from conception to completion of whatever project that they are creating. Try and better understand why they make the choices that they make. This show, as with all show, will have the show notes over at behindtheshot.tv. And a quick reminder for you, you can get this show in a podcast app of your choice in either video or audio format. Of course, that's only if your podcast app supports video. A number of them do. For example, Apple Podcasts supports video. You can do that there. You can also get the video over on YouTube at Behind the Shot as well. Today, I've got a very, very special guest. I have been excited to have this guy on since I found out that he was going to be on the show. I'd like to welcome the founder of Phlearn, Mr. Aaron Nace, to the show. Aaron, how are you?
Great. So cool to be here. And I'm excited to talk about one of my personal favorite composite images that I've really ever done. So I'm excited to get in there and talk about all the nitty-gritty technical stuff.
When we started talking about what image we were going to discuss, and this one was put in front of me, and there's a piece of information I don't want to share yet because it's a spoiler alert about how this image was made, it was immediately, oh yeah, we need to discuss that image. Before we do, I want to talk about you a little bit and have the audience get to know you a little bit, because as we were talking in the green room, you live in Chicago now, but you were actually born and raised on the island of Kauai, in Hawaiian Island. One of my favorite places. I was just there in May, and I am curious, from where you are now, looking back at your youth, I mean, for those that have never been to Kauai, let's kind of describe this, right? You've got forests, you've got more rain than almost any place you'll ever go to. You've got beautiful snorkeling and water, and you've got chickens, basically, wild chickens running around everywhere.
Everywhere.
That youth, how did that develop you as a creative?
Well, Hawaii is also like a super safe place. I mean, especially back in like the late 80s, early 90s when I grew up. So my parents just kind of let me and my two brothers run around the island and do whatever we want. I mean, people don't lock their doors in Hawaii. It's not at all a culture where you're concerned about, like what your children are doing. So, on days when we didn't have school and during the summers, it was just, we'd eat breakfast and all right, see you, Mom, have a good day. And we would just like go chase chickens and build forts and run around barefoot in the sugarcane fields and come back head to toe full of mud and just like have legitimate adventures and explore the island. There was nowhere we weren't allowed to go and really nothing we weren't allowed to do. And I think that kind of engendered like a spirit of like adventure and creativity and also independence in me and my brothers as well. And to this day, we're all still very independent. Both my brothers and I, we all have our own businesses. We're all, kind of like making things up as we go along. And I think that has a big part to the fact that our parents just kind of said, like, go do your thing. We trust you. Have a good time. And, I've never really known anything different. I've never been able to just like follow a strict plan. And I really do think it's because, there was never any expectation of a plan of action when I was growing up. It's just do whatever you want to do.
Well, and such an amazing place to grow up. But from Hawaii, your path to being involved in Photoshop, and because I mean, you are a Photoshop guru, but you are a photographer. And your path to that is something that fascinates me, because when your family moved to, I think it was North Carolina, you went to North Carolina University. Yes, I did my research on you. But you studied industrial design, planning on being, okay, catch these now, either an automotive or furniture designer.
Yeah.
Which are two completely different worlds.
Definitely.
How does that get to photography?
Totally by chance, honestly. I went to school, studying basically would become like a trade. As a designer, what most people wind up doing is working for a company as a designer. Let's say they're working for a car company, like the look and feel of the cars that we drive, people are designing that, what the interior, like the layout, like what materials are chosen, like, in the new Tesla, for example, there's a giant screen right in the middle of the console. Like some industrial designer made that choice with engineers, of course, to put that there and how they would interact with it, and basically how everything looks and feels. And that is very interesting to me, just like how we interact with the things around us, because good design can change your experience of the world. And I think that people naturally gravitate towards good design, whether they think about it or not. Good design can solve a problem easier, and it can alleviate frustrations for people. So it's always been incredibly interesting to me to have some kind of voice in that world. And going through school, I had an absolute blast. I graduated from school and just took a little bit of time to myself, because I, basically had just done, elementary, middle, whatever, high school, straight into college, and I hadn't really taken much time for myself. And I at that point, I felt like I had kind of like I checked all those boxes off, and I got out of school, and it was a little bit of like, what am I supposed to do with my life now? And I didn't exactly just want to go get a job right away. I just wanted to take some time. So I saved up some money and did some traveling, actually, around South America for close to a year. And at the time, I had a point and shoot camera and just started capturing everything around me, everything I possibly saw. I saw it as, one of the pivotal trips of my life, and wanted to make sure that I, had these pictures so I wouldn't forget, and also just to capture the beauty. I was in some amazing places. And that was like the first time that photography really interested me in a real way, as an art form. Photography.
So let me expound on that a little bit. So This is a trip to South America that you're documenting as you're doing it. It was a long trip, 6 months. You're thinking as you're documenting, most people go on a trip like that and they just take pictures, right? And it's more, okay, I want something for a photo album. You started at that moment thinking artistically about those shots?
Yeah.
Composition, etc.?
Definitely. So I had just graduated from design school, right? So, composition and, like it's, as artists and designers, we all know, like, I think if you understand good design and understand, fundamental tools like value and composition and light and shape and form, then, those understandings tend to transcend different fields. So a lot of what I learned as an industrial designer definitely applied to what I was doing in photography, using the difference between shape and form, scale, like something being small and something else being large. You can use that in design elements to create visual interest, but you can use it in photography as well. Creating depth and also the use of color, like designers choose color, oftentimes through inspiration from nature. And in photography, depending the location and the angle and the time of day that you're shooting, you can also choose the colors that are in your photos
as a design element.
As a design element. And you could, product photographers or like studio photographers or set or tabletop photographers, they go as far as, sometimes the camera doesn't move at all. They're actually literally designing every single piece of the photograph by picking and choosing the elements that go into that image.
The first time I had Trey Ratcliffe on, we were talking about an image that Trey shot of a museum in Paris. And I remember that there was this one segment near the end of the show where he's talking about, we were talking about color. And he described how he engineered color through that photo at the same time he was designing that photo for your eye to travel a certain path and giving your eye a rest by making sure it was darker in certain areas than like you say, it's a perfect example of design, really, when you start getting into those elements. But this all leads you to taking that kind of knowledge into education. So starting on YouTube as a YouTube channel that just shared knowledge with people as an educator, that takes you in 2011 to creating what is recognized as one of the default standards for online education, which is Phlearn. So for those that don't know Phlearn, you've got over 500 tutorials. You've got 1.5 million followers now on YouTube. And for those that don't know Phlearn, listeners and viewers, give me the short helicopter view of what's Phlearn.
What is Phlearn? Well, Phlearn is actually pretty simple. It's a video education platform. It was founded based on my personal interests and the things that I love to do. And that's Photoshop, photography, creating images, and like really expressing your personal voice. And over the last 10 years, we've built thousands and thousands of hours of education helping translate that creative voice. When you say, I've got something amazing in my head, I've got this image that I want to produce, how do I go about making this? From the photography standpoint to the raw processing standpoint to Photoshop, maybe it's compositing, maybe it's retouching, maybe it's graphics, all of those different interests are what's covered on Phlearn. So we really want to be like the one-stop shop for photographers and designers and illustrators and graphic artists to learn and grow their skill sets on the internet. So we make videos. We make educational videos that take you through everything step by step by step. You click play, you watch a person in front of you the entire time, just showing you everything they know. And the approach has always been...
I'll add to that, because this matters to me from an educational point of view. It's also with really good production quality. So what you're digesting is easy to digest because of how it's presented to you. That I think is one of actually the strong points of Phlearn, and the reason I think it's done so well is because information is presented in a logical path with good quality, right? You can absorb it.
I'm a bit of a tech nerd myself, so it's things like audio quality, video quality. That's just like my tech side of things coming out is like, okay, well, this has got to be top notch, because if the information you're trying to deliver is being overshadowed by poor audio or video quality, it doesn't do justice to the person trying to learn. So we've always tried to make it feel like you're watching these videos, you're kind of hanging out with a friend who just happens to be an expert in their field, and they're just showing you what they know. And we can do cool stuff on our platform, Phlearn.com, because we built the platform from the ground up. So it's a video streaming platform. You can watch it anywhere in the world, on any mobile device. It's a subscription. So once you hit go, you've got access to every video. And we include so many cool things. Like for all of our tutorials, we include the sample images so you can actually follow along with the tutorials. We'll include custom Photoshop brushes and actions and presets, and basically an entire package of course materials. So it's really like, you can go all the way from tutorials like the beginner's guide to Photoshop, which just kind of gets you into the swing of Photoshop, to more advanced compositing, like the image we're going to talk about later, and really just kind of like go wherever your creativity leads you.
And at your own path too. And Aaron has been kind enough to give you guys, the viewers and listeners, to give you guys a discount code. So grab a pen and paper, and I'm going to give you the discount code, and then we're going to jump into the image really quick. But while they're getting their pen and paper, I want to say what's at the end of your bio. Because what's at the end of your bio, to me, is profound. At the end of your bio, it says, keep it simple, keep it weird, enjoy the adventure, and never stop learning. And if that's not a key to life, my friend, then nothing absolutely is. So here's the discount code really quick for Phlearn that Aaron has given you guys. It's Behind the Shot 20. What that will do is if you do the subscription for Phlearn, which you can get to at phlearn.com, if you do the subscription for Phlearn, that will get you a 20% discount on a Phlearn subscription. All right. So make sure that you head on over there. And again, just to put it up on the screen again for those watching video, it's Behind the Shot 20. That'll get you 20% off a Phlearn subscription. And while I'm on it, by the way, a quick reminder to you guys, as long as you're on the web, we also have a new Flickr group, by the way. Go join the Behind the Shot Flickr group. We're going to use that in the show as we move down the road and get more people there. So let's get into the picture. And before I bring it up, the name of this shot is Baxter.
Yeah.
I don't want people seeing it yet. I'm going to bring it up here in a minute. Is that the name of the kid or the secondary subject that's in the picture?
Is the secondary subject. Yeah.
Okay, so let me bring this thing up. This shot, I don't even know where to go with this. I mean, I sit down and whenever I do a show, I look through people's portfolio and I look for commonalities in the work that people do to try and understand, oh, you know what, they keep going to this or they keep, with your work, that's really, really hard to do. So let me try and describe this particular image because it's yeah. All right. So for those of you on audio, you can run by the website at behindtheshot.tv to see this image. Those of you watching on video, which again, you can get in a podcast app. As long as your podcast app supports video, there is a separate feed you can subscribe to. You can also see it on YouTube or you can watch it at the website, behindtheshot.tv. This is either early morning or dusk. Looks more early morning. And it's in an alley. And I want you to picture an alley in an old part of town because this actually has power poles and telephone poles and wires everywhere and a roll-up garage door half open, right? Cracked asphalt. And when I say cracked asphalt, I'm not talking little cracks. I'm talking 3-inch wide cracks in the asphalt. And it's asphalt, by the way. So it's clearly an alley, probably not a street. There's a small boy dead center, lower third of the frame, with a flashlight that has the most realistic beam I've ever seen in a photograph. That beam is pointing frame left on the lower third. And, okay, here we go. For those of you that look at the image and say, no, Steve, that's not how you describe that. My apologies. It's like a fuzzy teddy bear type monster with horns that's behind him peeking out from like the frame right. Did I do pretty good?
I think you did great. Yeah. And his name is Baxter.
And okay, so here's the special part. I want to get this out first. You built Baxter.
Yeah. So Baxter is real. Do you want me to get into like the backstory of like why I made this photo and what I was thinking about?
Yeah, because that's your inspiration. That's your pre-visualization. I'd love to understand that, but let me just get one thing clear. When I was first told in email that, oh yeah, I created Baxter, I thought I'm picturing Photoshop brushes.
Oh yeah.
Baxter is real. He's 3D.
Yeah, he's a flesh and blood, living, breathing, stuffed animal come to life.
Amazing. And we'll show behind the scenes here in a second. So tell me the conception of this.
So the whole idea behind the photo was a little bit of like my own childhood, and I had a few different ideas and a few different concepts I was pulling together, and a lot of my conceptual images are based on stories that I'm either kind of familiar with from my childhood or just some things that I kind of pull together. So this image was a little bit of like a Calvin and Hobbes type story, if you've ever
oh yeah,
read that comic, where a young boy's stuffed animal comes to life and they get into mischief. Also with a bit of Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, where
yes,
you have all these like monsters, and the main character falls asleep and goes to the land of the wild things. So I loved both of those things growing up, and I wanted to create a version of that where The idea that this young boy had a stuffed animal that was his good friend, and at night, his parents would go to sleep, and he and the stuffed animal would go on adventures. And I wanted the stuffed animal to be, maybe 2.5 feet tall in, you know, during the daytime when the stuffed animal is inanimate. But at night, I wanted the stuffed animal to be able to come alive and to grow to any height. So the idea was, okay, in the photograph, I want him to be bigger than a garage. I want him to be 15 feet tall in the final image, and I wanted the stuffed animal and the subject, the boy, to clearly be like interacting. So I thought hide and seek would just be a really fun way. So a couple of really, I spent a few months making this image, from the idea all the way to the final product. So, thinking about like, how do you make hide and seek in a photograph? Well, part of that is like, you kind of want the viewer to be playing hide and seek too. Like the person who's actually looking at the image, kind of want them to play hide and seek too. So I photographed this. It was actually dusk. It was, the sun was just setting. I was inspired visually by a few photographers. Gregory Crutzen does some beautiful work at dawn and dusk. And then also Benoit P is a French photographer. He did some beautiful, beautiful work. So I was inspired visually by those images. And the concept of hide and seek, I wanted the viewer to go through that too. So I was like, okay, well, the person looking, doing this searching, I wanted to make sure that was when you look at this photograph, I wanted to make sure that that's what you looked at first. Like you're looking at the young boy. So he's backlit. We did put a strobe in this photograph to backlight him a little bit to separate.
Where is the strobe?
It's not in the final image.
It was just in the street and you removed it?
It was in the street and we removed it. It's near where one of the street lights would be. So
that was one of my questions.
Right.
Because you can see a rim light on his hair.
You can see a rim light on his hair, but there's no strobe visible in the shot. So the idea was that because there are street lights in the shot, that those would, kind of take the place of, make it believable that obviously you can go dissecting and everything. Like, oh, of course, there's a rim light here, but not in the shot. You took it. But I wanted a bit of a rim light around this main subject to separate him from the background, also to draw more attention to him, and to kind of show that he was wearing like a furry hat, so like that's his hat that he wore with Baxter to like.
And by the way, the rim light looks like it's coming from that bright light on the pole.
Yeah, that was the idea.
It matches absolutely perfectly. What's interesting is the hide and seek concept to me, because when I saw this, I almost thought that the boy that they were friends. Clearly, they're together, right? It's not like the monster sneaking up on him. I never saw that. He's too fuzzy and cute, right? But my first interpretation of this shot was that the boy is going to check something out, and his friend Teddy Bear Monster is more afraid than the boy and is staying behind him.
That makes sense too. Yeah.
Which is part of what I love about this type of art and photography in general, is that everybody will see just a slight twist.
Yeah. And I think that, when creating images like this, I mean, this is a very produced photograph. There's nothing unintentional about this, but the real important thing, in my opinion, when making something like this is trying to tell a story, and with some sort of a story, everyone has their own interpretation of that story. But if you have a photograph and there's no story, it's really hard to stay interested in the image, so building a little bit of a story element, I think just kind of pulls you in and makes you feel like you want to know a little bit more, like what happened right before this and what's about to happen. That story element is something that I was really working quite a bit with at the time.
on the technical end of this, how many actual photographs are in this composite?
Oh, I would say 4 or 5 or 6, maybe.
So
I
you've got the
actually
boy
don't
in the
know.
alley. You've got the monster is composited in.
Yeah.
And then
The
some other
alley
stuff
itself,
added.
So the alley itself, and I know you have these images that maybe you can show on the website or whatever, but the alley itself is actually a composite of 2 different alleys. So it's like the left side of the alley is from one photograph, and the right side of that alley is from a totally different photograph.
This is the buildings on the right and the buildings on the left aren't on the same street?
No, well, they are on the same street, but it's actually looking the opposite way on the alley. So they're not technically there. It's a different. So technically, the buildings on the left and the buildings on the right, in real life, they're technically both on the same side of the street, just looking opposite directions.
Okay, that's a good time. Let's go into these behind the scenes.
And the reason why I did that is because what was on the camera right side of the alley was just a bunch of trash cans and and some streets there and no place for Baxter to hide. Baxter has to hide behind a garage. That was really important in the concept. So I photographed what I wanted Baxter to be hiding behind and the right side of the alley, and then photographed the left side of the alley and then combine those two together. So that was actually one of the more difficult things to do, was to put 2 different sides or to put the same side of the street taken from 2 different angles and make it look like it's 2 different sides of the street, especially because you have things like light poles and telephone wires that crisscross from one side to another. So you can't just do a simple blend. I actually wound up like recreating and repainting a lot of that background to get to just build the background. And it's not even something that's like, oh, that's a cool part of the composite. I mean, hopefully you don't even notice that, but that was actually technically kind of one of the more difficult things to do.
I never, wow.
And there's only,
because now I'm picturing you flipping that and merging it down the center, and it just was like, okay, so he merged down the center, and then now, it's hitting me. You've got poles and wires. Let's show these behind the scenes ones.
Great.
First behind the scene image is the alley with like a reddish wall and a blue trash can on the left.
Yeah, so that's going to become the camera right alley.
That's the garage Baxter's behind.
That's the garage that Baxter is behind. So the right side of that photo becomes the right side of the final composite.
What's interesting is, that asphalt is really cracked. I mean, it's like earthquake cracked. The second one is Baxter, and when you sent this to me, just literally half an hour before we started, this was the first time I realized that he was not a Photoshop creation. He's a living thing. I mean, he's 3D. That is, and he's actually pretty big.
You can see a person in that photograph too. Baxter's about 3 feet tall.
Yeah, he's pocket high on the person standing there.
Yeah, for sure.
Next one is Baxter hiding behind. Okay, this is interesting. So this is the position he's in the final image. So he's hiding behind what looks like a V-flat in a studio with a dark piece of carpet to obviously control the light so that it looks like the final product. And then there's a white V-flat behind him. So this was the plate you shot for that?
Yeah, so this becomes the final version of Baxter, or very similar. I think it might be a slightly different shot, but I wanted to include, Baxter in the studio because, again, we wanted Baxter to be like 15 feet tall, but I didn't want to build a 15-foot tall puppet. I wanted to build a 3-foot tall puppet and then use Photoshop and some perspective trickery to make him look like he was 15 feet tall.
So I have does Baxter still exist? Do you still have him?
Yeah, he exists. I actually thought about grabbing him for this for this podcast, but yeah, he's like our studio mascot, man. That
is awesome. That is just awesome. So the final image, and this one really puts it in perspective, is you've got it's obviously at a different time because the garage door on the left is closed here. It's not half open. You've got the little boy with the flashlight and Baxter standing behind, right next to him. And this is like one of the cutest things ever because this looks like Alf. I mean, you'd think that this guy was real. So with that in mind, let's go back to the final image, and you can kind of see how this was composite. You know, I have a question. Was the one rim light the only light you used?
No, you can see if you go back to the image 9788.dng, or I guess it's JPEG. The image, the fourth image you showed, the last behind the scene image with the car behind the boy and Baxter.
Oh yeah.
So you can see on the very left of the frame, there's a light stand there with a cord hanging down and a sandbag, red strap of a sandbag on the bottom left. So that's like a 60 or 70 or 80 inch parabolic reflector that's about maybe 10, 15, 20 feet up in the air
to give that look. Okay, so that brings in an interesting question then.
Yeah.
And again, forgive me because this is not what I do, right? So these are you're going to go, really? You asked that question, but I have to ask.
Yeah.
Clearly, you're going for lighting, direction, and quality, and shadow quality, and emotion and mood.
Yeah,
but you don't really care about color because you're clearly manipulating color to death in post to get that look that you want, right?
Yeah, well, definitely.
So do you worry about it at all at the shoot?
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure. That's why we chose the time of day to shoot that we did, because I really wanted this. I wanted the end shot to be, a very subtle mix of like bluish purple and like a muted yellow. Like
and you knew that in advance.
Yeah, definitely. So, for instance, the parabolic reflector that's lighting our main subject, that has orange gel on it. So the light coming off of that is a bit warm, which means I could cool down my white balance even more to make the sky even more blue, and my subject is going to still look a little bit more natural. Also, the time of day that we photographed allowed a decent balance between the light in the sky and the light in the rest of the image. Like I didn't want to shoot in the middle of the day or the middle of the night because I wanted enough light on my subject, like with my strobes. I wanted to be able to light my subjects intentionally and purposefully, but I didn't want that light to be the only light in the photograph. So it was very important that some of the light from the day was still remaining in the final image. So, when trying to balance strobe light with ambient light, especially at this time of day, we had like probably a 15, 20-minute window where that was going to work. So everything was set up well ahead of time. And, when the light was right, just start snapping away.
And people struggle with balancing flash to light. And there's a little cover here because you're not trying to shoot a product and try and keep, the Coca-Cola red perfectly red. That you're going to do some manipulation in post, but still to get the shadows and the lighting directions and everything to feel real. And what's fascinating about this image, by the way, the one behind the scenes had the garage door. I'm just thinking this, so it's popping out of my head. The garage door closed. The garage door being open just, to me, adds so much to the shot, actually. But
I agree, and that was a luck. That was just an element of luck.
So you didn't open it?
No, because you can see that car behind in this shot with the car in it behind the boy and Baxter. That car was just going into that garage that's back there. That was not a planned thing at all. I was just,
it looks so much more. It makes that side balance the shot more with the door half open. But this shot looks, people, seriously, if you're listening on audio, I rarely do this. I am begging you to go to the website and actually go down to the gallery, click the shot, let it pop up in a light box, or fast forward the video someday to where you can see it. It looks so real. And what I love about it also is compositionally, and this is where that industrial design comes in. So the alley fades from full scene width back towards the right upper third, right? You've got leading lines. You've got the rule of thirds going on. It's not the rule of odds, and yet oddly it is. And let me explain that. You've got the boy and you've got Baxter. That it just hit me. My eye really goes to that open door, that black spot in the open door, as though it's a third item in the scene. Not subject per se, but it kind of gives me that rule of odds a little bit. When you take an image like this into post, do you worry about assembling first, color correction and color toning last? What's your path?
Yeah, color is always last. So the first thing that you want to do when you're, going to do a composite like this is basically just get everything together in a way that looks, believable, which is, it can be very difficult to do. I've been doing this for a long time, and it's still very difficult for me, because, at the end of the day, just grabbing an element from one place and putting it in a different place and making it look like it belongs, that's a difficult thing to do. Basically, the end goal is to match light and color and perspective and angle. And anyone trying to match light is, the light inside your house is very different from the light outside, and
right.
The light in the morning is very different from the light in the afternoon. Any photographer, the thing that defines every photograph anyone's ever taken is light, and it's incredibly different, every time you press that shutter. So that just kind of speaks to the endless amount of variation in light. So matching lighting from one image to another, or like from an outdoor shot to a studio shot, that's pretty tough to do. I've been, I wouldn't say that I have it mastered by any means.
Oh, I would.
Well, that's super nice of you, and this is one of the images that I'm super proud of. But I can look at this and see 25 things that I did wrong with it too.
Okay,
and,
are you being serious? You look at this shot. Well, I guess that's the truth with any creative, right? We always look back at our children and think, I wish I would have. But,
right. I'm not the beat myself up type of person, but yes, I can most definitely look at this shot and see tons of things that are technically incorrect. Like, okay, so for instance, the boy has a bit of a rim light behind him, right?
Right.
And that light supposedly is coming from the street light that's in that shot. Well, the shadow on the boy is coming from a slightly different direction than the street light. So if that street light were actually rim lighting the boy, the shadow would have more of like a left angle to it. And Baxter doesn't have as much of a rim light on his hair as the boy, and he should actually have maybe even a little bit more.
Because he's closer and higher. And by the way, let me just mention to people, because I actually think what you just did is actually a wonderful thing. When you're trying to improve your work, we talk about image critiques and things like that, but when you're trying to improve your own work, you've got to remove yourself from being the creator sometimes and sit back and look at your work in a way to look for things that even your old work that you're not going to go fix. Find those things that'll make you grow. There's no question. Here's a question for you. Quick tip.
Sure. Yeah.
Obviously, with the Adobe photography plan, and of course, you've got Affinity, and there are alternatives out there to Lightroom and to Photoshop. There's ways for photographers to get involved, right, with more than just photography. But many people still have a great fear of Photoshop type, for lack of a better phrase, post-production. What's your one tip? Now, obviously, Phlearn has classes in Lightroom and Photoshop, okay? And by the way, there are classes I've seen of yours that literally teach what you did in this shot. But what's your one tip for people to get over that fear of going a little deeper into creation?
Well, I would say, personal projects are just such a wonderful thing to do, because if there's no consequence to whether something turns out or not, it opens you up to play a little bit more and to kind of do something that maybe is a little bit outside of your comfort zone. If a client is paying you money and looking at you, chances are you're not going to do something where you're just like unsure whether it's even going to work. I mean, for me anyway, I want to make sure that I know exactly what I'm doing when a client is paying. But, when it comes to my personal projects, if something doesn't work out, like, no big deal. That's just a learning opportunity. Okay, well, why didn't it work out? Well, I didn't do this or that exactly right. So the next time I do another project, I can try to go fix those individual elements. So I would say, have those personal projects and use those to kind of push yourself. And, you don't have to show anyone if you don't want to. I've got hundreds of images that I've taken over the years that no one has ever seen because they just simply didn't work. Like the same week that I took this Baxter image, I had another conceptual photo shoot that I don't think I published at all because it just didn't work.
But yeah, you're right though. There's an amazing, what's the word I'm looking for? There's an amazing freedom to being unconnected from having to deliver something.
Yeah. Like what? There's no big deal. It didn't work out. Well, that's a learning experience. And, hopefully you had fun in the process, and like my personal work is, it's done on a shoestring budget. We're not spending big bucks here. But, that being said, I also, like I, mentioned for this Baxter shot, I put about 3 months of energy into this photograph. So I wanted it to work. Like I did my best to try to like think of everything and pull everything together in a way that would work in the end. But, sometimes it just doesn't, sometimes you get out there and it starts raining or, you cast a subject who you think is going to be great. And, it, for some reason or other, it just might not be exactly what you had imagined or,
and that goes both ways because sometimes a car pulls in a garage.
Yeah, sometimes a car pulls in a garage, and that was unexpected. But That was like, okay, we're leaving that in because that looks really great.
So I have a surprise question for you. They're all surprise questions, but still. If you were to pick, it's always fascinating to me when I used to deal with music a lot. I've been in radio a lot of years, and I always used to try and understand people's music taste. I'd always say, what CD did you last buy, right? Not what do you listen to, but what would you spend your money on? Well, I kind of have that question for you. We all have a lot of photographers that you like. But if you were to tell people, oh, you've got to go see the work of, what's one photographer you would recommend that people go look up?
David LaChapelle, I would recommend looking at his work. He just does some, like stuff that's just on another level. He's been an inspiration for me since day one. I'll just give, tiny little warning. I mean, there's nudity in a lot of his photographs and,
so it may not be safe for work, but look him up.
Not safe for work and not safe if you don't want to see like weird stuff. He's pushing the envelope as far as creativity goes and, doing a lot of stuff that may offend some people. But personally, I've always been very attracted to his work. I think he's just a absolute master of making things interesting. Like I look at his images and I just can't stop looking at them. And, to me, that's like such a gem, especially these days when we're surrounded by images, everywhere we look. It's like, I probably look at 1,000 photographs a day, like not even intentionally, you know what I mean? Just like spend 2 seconds
pop
on
up in front of you.
I mean, if you are on any type of computer or mobile device for a day, you're going to see a lot of images. They're just in our life. We're in a very visual culture. And, to be able to create images that make you pause and be like, whoa, I got to keep looking at this. Like, what's going on here? That's very special. And I don't see it much. And, with his work, I see it all the time. So it's like, dude, awesome. Yeah, it pulls me in. So but keep in mind, there's some nudity in his work, and sometimes he does some things that
give
that
the
may
name one
offend.
more time.
It's David LaChapelle.
Okay, David LaChapelle. And
Yeah,
I want to remind everybody that Aaron has been kind enough to give us that discount code. If you go to Phlearn and you subscribe to Phlearn, you can get 20% off a Phlearn subscription with Behind the Shot 20, all one word. Don't put spaces. It's like a hashtag. Don't put spaces between, around the just Behind the Shot 20, no spaces. That'll get you 20% discount on a Phlearn subscription. And I also want to mention, because this article just popped up this week, and it mentions, I'm not in it, which is understandable actually, but it mentions some amazing photography podcasts. So if you are interested in looking up more photography podcasts, I want to give the writer of this article. Phlearn has a magazine on the website. It's awesome. And the guy who wrote it is Michael, is it Freeman?
I believe so.
Okay, so Michael Freeman wrote The Best Podcasts for Photographers. And I will have a link in the show notes, but you got Aberonix Perello is in there, Candid Frame. You've got Master Photography Podcast in there. My Old Home TWIP with Frederick Van Johnson is in there. And there's a bunch of other ones. He Shoots, He Draws, I think, is in there as well, which I think you were just on.
Yep.
There are some really good resources in there. Be sure to go check that out again. Link images from Aaron, the behind the shot stuff I'll put up there, behind the scenes stuff, are all going to be at behindtheshot.tv. Now, if you want to connect with Aaron, you can just go to Phlearn anywhere. So your social media is Phlearn everywhere, right?
Definitely. Yeah. PH Learn. So that's PHLEARN.
Okay. And then the website is phlearn.com. I do want to give out, if people want to look at his portfolio, if you watch the video, I put lower thirds up that put all these up. But if you're on the audio, the links are on the website, behindtheshot.tv. But it's Aaron-Nace, so hyphen, right? Aaron-Nace.com. You can go check out his portfolio. Follow him online. Give him some love. And again, thank you very much for that code Behind the Shot 20 for the 20% discount. Appreciate it. And Aaron, thank you so much for being on, man.
Yeah, this has been an absolute blast. I did have, if we have 2 more seconds, I wanted to talk about one more thing about this image.
You can talk about whatever you want.
Cool. So in planning for this image, it's like, okay, we're going to have a young boy in this image, with a flashlight looking off. And then Baxter's kind of be not as lit, and he's going to be big, right? He's going to be 15 feet tall. And I made Baxter, with my hands. It's he's a physical thing. He's got, I ordered fake fur off of the internet, and he's got his teeth are actual buffalo teeth from a real buffalo. He's got a teddy bear nose. He has his eyes are taxidermy elk eyes, when they taxidermy animals. So they're got a lot of depth and reality to them. His horns are goat horns. His eyebrows are foxtails. They're made out of foxtails. He's got some floppy ears. So when I was making Baxter, I drew Baxter a lot of times before finally making him, because I had a really important goal with Baxter, right? Because he was going to be behind the boy in a dark alley, and he's going to be 15 feet tall. And he's kind of a monster. So I didn't want him to be scary.
Right.
That was my main goal with Baxter, is okay, we have a 15-foot tall monster behind a boy at night, peeking out from a garage he's going to, but he couldn't be scary. That was goal number 1 with Baxter. So that's actually where a lot of the character design comes in. So if you look at his teeth, actually one of his teeth is chipped. He has a chipped tooth on the bottom, and he's got very rounded teeth. He's just got big, chunky, rounded teeth, and one of them's got a chip on it, kind of hinting to the fact that maybe he's got really, really short legs, and he's got a little bit of a belly. He's got a little bit of a pooch. So his short legs, maybe he was running really fast with his short legs and he tripped and fell and maybe cracked one of his tooth. So he's kind of like a clumsy, like little. I mean, he's a lovable. I love Baxter. He's like,
well, and there's a weird thing. The first time I saw him, I knew he wasn't intended to be scary, but okay, they're not real. I understand that, but mm-hmm. His eyes.
Yeah,
he has a look in his eyes of a child's bewilderment. Right? Like they're wide open and he's alert. Yeah. There's no intimidation in there. He's brilliantly built.
Thanks.
I want to touch that. I want to touch him. I want to feel what he feels like.
Oh, he's great. He's great. He's here in our Chicago studio, and he's a champion. So, just one of those other things that was part of the fun of this was like, how do I make something? Like, how do I build Baxter in a way to where he's obviously like not scary, to where he's obviously kind of like cute and lovable, and things like the short legs and the big fluffy eyebrows and the chipped tooth, and little bit of he's got a little bit of a tummy on him. These things were super. They were a really important part of building him. So. I just wanted to touch on that because it's just another fun thing. I mean, building Baxter technically has nothing to do with photography, but because this was a personal project and just it was a passion project and something that I wanted to do, all of a sudden I found myself, making this guy as well. And, I think if you follow your passions and pursue personal projects and have fun and, come up with stories and ideas, then you might find yourself, pulling together all kinds of, interesting ideas and concepts to pull a story together. So this is, it is an image at the end of the day, but it's far more than just a snapshot. It's many different photos combined together. With the idea to tell a story, and that to me is the most fun. It's like, when that story comes to life, and you look at this image, and all of the compositing, all the technical stuff just fades away. The technical stuff is just how you get to the end product, but that, I want all that to just fade away and not even be evident. And at the end of the day, you just look at this and it's like, oh, what's the story? Like, what's going on here? Like, what is this? Like, that to me is like, that's the best feeling to.
Well, and you succeeded. I mean, seriously, when I was told that you made Baxter, I thought, okay, he must have drawn him because he looks real in this picture. I mean, I hate to say it, but he looks like there's a 15-foot beast standing behind this little boy. It looks so real. But again, the technical stuff does disappear. I had no idea that it was a mirror image of an alley, that it was flipped over. The coloring, the lighting, really just, you do brilliant work, my friend. Just absolutely brilliant work. And what I also like is people that are not going to go build a Baxter. That's okay, because there's still, you understand. Or you can, from a creation like this, you can understand the creative process that even if you're just shooting a model on a beach at the right time of day, you've got to think about the time of day. You've got to think about where you put your lights. You got to think, I can put a light there and remove it later, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. There's so much that you can do to bring the creativity style that an Aaron Nace uses to pure photography. And anywhere in between, right? I mean, that to me is the beautiful part of the time that we live in. These tools exist for anybody, no matter what your art. So I can't say thank you enough for sharing.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed, getting to like do a deep dive into an image that's, it's got a real special place in my heart. So thank you.
I want to meet Baxter someday. Next time, we were just in Chicago not long ago either. And next time I'm there, I'm going to email you and I'm going to beg you to let me come see your studio and meet Baxter. Because, okay, stupid question again. The fur that you used, is it teddy bear soft, or it looks a little more coarse than that?
Yeah, it's kind of coarse. Yeah, it's like he's yeah, it's like animal fur. I mean, it's fake fur, by the way. His eyebrows are real foxtails, and his horns are real goat horns. But the fur on that makes him up is
just
fake
amazing. I'll never forget when I saw the email. Oh, I made that, and my jaw hit the floor because I never pictured that coming out. I thought it was all. It's just so good. So Aaron Nace, Phlearn, Phlearn, so Phlearn.com, @Phlearn on all social media, aaron-nace.com for Aaron's portfolio. Aaron Nace, founder of Phlearn, an amazing creative artist. Thank you again for being on Behind the Shot.
Thanks so much. Had a blast.
So for everybody that's watching this, again, you can see the behind the scenes stuff and a number of other shots of Aaron's work at behindtheshot.tv. You can subscribe there as well. We're also on YouTube. We've got the new Flickr group that we're building membership on that we're going to use down the road for other areas of the show. We might do some critique shows and a bunch of other different things. So make sure you hit those up, and you can subscribe both in video and audio in whatever podcast app you have, as long as you choose one for video. Otherwise, just subscribe to the audio one, and you can always go look at the picture at the website behindtheshot.tv. Also, I would like to ask, if you are an iTunes person, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, go drop a review. It does help with discoverability, and I would really, really appreciate it. So there you go. I'm Steve Brazill. This is Behind the Shot, the show where we try and get inside the mind of a great photographer or creative artist by taking a closer look at one of their shots, from conception to completion, all the stories, all the challenges that happen in between. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next show.